The bright glass doors of Stone Enterprises opened with a soft hiss as Olivia Benson stepped inside. She clutched her small brown handbag tightly, her heart pounding with nervous excitement. This was her first day as an intern. A big chance, a fresh start. She wore a plain white blouse tucked into a neat black skirt. Her shoes were worn at the heels but polished. Her hair was tied back into a simple ponytail. She didn't look like much, but her eyes were full of quiet determination. "Excuse me," she said softly at the front desk. "I'm Olivia, the new intern for the design department." The receptionist gave her a quick glance, barely hiding her boredom. "Take the elevator to the 10th floor. Ask for Miss Sandra." Olivia nodded, whispered a thank you, and hurried in. Upstairs, the 10th floor was buzzing with voices, heels clicking, and the soft hum of computers. Everything was sleek and modern. Olivia felt small in the middle of it all. Miss Sandra's office was hard to miss, a glass-walled corner room with gold lettering on the door. Olivia walked up and knocked gently. A sharp voice called, "Come in!" Sandra was tall, striking, and sharply dressed in a red blazer. Her makeup was flawless. She didn't smile. "So you're the intern?" Sandra asked, looking her up and down like she was checking the tag on a cheap item in a store. "Yes, ma'am," Olivia replied, standing straight. Sandra scoffed. "We don't have time for lazy people here. You're not here to learn, you're here to work. Understand?" "Yes, ma'am." "Good. Start by making 20 photocopies of this and drop them in the meeting room." She tossed a thick stack of documents on the table. Olivia picked them up carefully. "Right away." Sandra rolled her eyes. "Try not to mess that up." As Olivia walked toward the photocopy room, she passed a small figure sweeping the floor near the break area. It was an elderly woman, bent slightly with age, wearing an oversized cleaning uniform and a white scarf covering most of her gray hair. She moved slowly, humming softly to herself as she swept up crumpled papers. Her eyes were kind, but quiet. She didn't speak to anyone, and no one spoke to her. A group of employees walked past, and one of them muttered loud enough to hear, "Why don't they just retire, these old people? She's so slow." The others laughed. Olivia didn't. She paused beside the old woman. "Good morning, Ma. Can I help you with anything?" The woman looked up, surprised. She smiled gently. "No, dear, but thank you. You're kind." Olivia smiled back and continued her task. Back in Sandra's office, the head of design watched the scene through the glass wall, her arms crossed. "Look at that," she muttered to herself, trying to play sweet on her first day. "Let's see how long that lasts." And just like that, the quiet war had begun. The following day, the sun was barely rising higher in the sky, but the office of Stone Enterprises was already alive with motion. People moved quickly, typing, printing, and pacing in heels that clicked sharply against the floor. Somewhere in the middle of it all, the old cleaner, quiet, steady, mopped the corridor near the design department. Olivia had just returned from delivering some files when she noticed something strange. Miss Sandra, in her usual towering heels and tight skirt, was standing in the hallway holding a paper cup of water. She narrowed her eyes at the cleaner and then, without warning, tilted the cup sideways. The water splashed onto the freshly cleaned floor right in front of the mop. "Oh dear," Sandra said in a mocking tone. "What a mess. You should clean that up. That's what you're paid for, right?" The old cleaner paused, looked at the water, and then gently nodded. "Yes, Ma." She bent down slowly to wipe it again, her knees creaking as she moved. Sandra scoffed. "You're old, you're slow, and honestly, you're just in everyone's way. You should be at home, not crawling around like this in a company full of young people. It's annoying to watch." The old cleaner said nothing. She just kept mopping. Olivia, who had overheard everything, felt her chest tighten. She stepped forward quickly. "Excuse me, Miss Sandra," she said carefully, "but I don't think that was fair. The cleaner just cleaned that floor. You poured the water on purpose." Sandra's eyes narrowed. "What did you say?" Olivia straightened up, her voice calm. "It's not right to treat her like that. She's doing her job." Sandra let out a sharp laugh. "Oh, look, the intern has found her voice. How touching. You want to play hero for this? This dusty old cleaner?" At that moment, Sandra lifted her hand dramatically, and suddenly her jade bracelet slipped off her wrist and shattered on the tile floor. Pieces of green stone scattered everywhere. Sandra gasped. Look what you've done, she snapped, turning to the cleaner. You made me break my bracelet. Do you know how much this costs? It's worth $28,000. You better be ready to pay for it. The cleaner looked up, stunned. But I didn't touch. Don't you dare talk back, Sandra shouted. This is ice jade, top quality. You couldn't afford it even if we sold your whole family. Several staff members nearby stopped what they were doing, eyes wide, but no one said anything. Olivia looked at the shattered bracelet pieces. Her eyes narrowed. With respect, Miss Sandra, she said gently, this doesn't look like ice jade. Real jade doesn't break that easily. Sandra whipped around. Excuse me? Olivia walked closer, then carefully picked up a shard. I've studied a little jewelry. This bracelet has no impurities at all. Its color is too flat. Real jade always has natural lines or spots. This one looks like glass. The office went silent. You little rat, Sandra hissed. You think you know more than me? You're just an intern. You want to insult me in front of my team? I'm not insulting you, Olivia said quietly, but it's wrong to blame someone for something they didn't do. You dropped it yourself. Sandra's hands were shaking now. I will report you to HR right now. Both you and this useless old woman, you're both finished here. Fired. Miss Sandra, one employee mumbled. Maybe we should just check the CCTV. No need, she snapped. My word is final. I'm the head of this department. The old cleaner, still on her knees, quietly said, I didn't mean any trouble. Olivia stood beside her. You're not alone, Ma. I saw everything. Sandra looked around the room. The others lowered their heads. No one dared speak. Only Olivia stood tall. The silence in the office was sharp, tense. Olivia stood protectively beside the old cleaner while Sandra trembled with fury, her eyes darting toward the gathering crowd of staff. Security! Sandra barked, her voice slicing through the air. Throw them both out, right now! Two uniformed guards who had been nearby stepped forward hesitantly. One of them scratched the back of his neck. Ma, are you sure? Sandra glared at him. Do you want me to call HR myself? Do it now. The guards exchanged an uneasy glance, then walked toward Olivia and the old cleaner. Please, the older of the two said softly. Let's go downstairs. We're just following instructions. Olivia's heart raced. You can't do this. We didn't do anything wrong. The old cleaner didn't speak. She just picked up her mop and cloth, trying not to meet anyone's eyes. Then a phone rang. Not Olivia's, not Sandra's. It was the guard's radio. He pressed it to his ear. After a second, his eyes widened. He turned to Sandra. Ma, we've been told to stop everything. What? Sandra snapped. By who? By the CEO's assistant. He's on his way. Just then, the elevator doors at the end of the corridor dinged and opened. Alexander Johnson stepped out. Tall, calm, and sharply dressed in a deep blue suit, his presence made the entire hallway freeze. Everyone turned. Some stepped back. Others stared in disbelief. Olivia blinked. He walked slowly, eyes scanning the tense group in front of him. His gaze stopped on Olivia, and then softened slightly. But when he looked at the old cleaner, something in his face changed, like a switch had flipped inside him. He walked over and gently touched her shoulder. Are you all right? He asked. The cleaner looked up at him, eyes calm, and nodded slowly. Yes, I'm fine. Everyone looked around in confusion. Alex turned to the guards. Who told you to escort her out? One of them hesitated. Miss Sandra, sir. Alex turned towards Sandra now, his expression unreadable. You told them to throw her out? Sandra straightened. Yes, sir. She caused a scene. And the intern, Olivia, disrespected me. Alex didn't respond right away. He looked at Sandra for a moment longer. Then he spoke. This woman you were about to throw out is my mother. Gasps echoed around the hallway like a wave crashing through the building. Sandra's mouth fell open. Your mother? The old cleaner gave a soft sigh and quietly leaned on her mop. No one spoke. Olivia's eyes widened in shock. She turned to the old cleaner. How had she not known? Alex continued, his voice calm but firm. Her name is Mrs. Grace Johnson. She chose to visit the company today, without revealing who she was. Clearly, she didn't like what she saw. Sandra's hands trembled slightly. "Sir, I didn't know. I swear I didn't know." "But you still treated her like she was worthless. You clearly have no regard for the elderly," Alex said, each word colder than the last. "You mocked her, insulted her, and accused her of something she didn't do." Everyone stood frozen. Some staff quietly stepped away from Sandra's side. Olivia felt a lump rising in her throat. Sandra swallowed hard. "Sir, I only acted on what I saw. I didn't mean to offend anyone." But Alex was already turning toward Olivia. "Thank you," he said gently, "for standing up for her." Olivia could barely speak. I just told the truth." Sandra stared, completely silent now. Her cheeks burned with shame, but she said nothing more. The hallway at Stone Enterprises remained frozen in disbelief. Murmurs began to rise like waves through the office. Did he just say that Cleaner is his mother? But why would the mother of the CEO, a billionaire, pretend to be a janitor? She was sweeping the floor. No wonder he came down here himself. None of them dared ask the question aloud, but they were all thinking the same thing. What exactly is going on? Alexander Johnson didn't answer any of the whispered questions around him. His face was calm, unreadable, but as his eyes briefly found Olivia's, there was something there, a flicker of recognition, of something deeper. Olivia noticed it, but said nothing. She lowered her gaze, pretending to adjust the files in her hands. He gave her a faint nod, then turned away. But behind the silence was a storm of memory. Flashback. 2 months ago. The hotel room was dim. The air was heavy with expensive perfume and something else, something stronger. Olivia's eyelids fluttered open, the edges of her vision blurry. Her mouth felt dry, her head pounded. She was lying on a bed she didn't recognize. The sheets were silky, cold. A low hum came from the air conditioner. She sat up, her heart racing, her dress still on, her bag gone, the door locked. That's when the memory came rushing back. Her mother, her sister Bella, the argument, the shouting, then the juice. "Just drink it, Olivia. You need to relax." They had drugged her, then sold her off. $50,000. To an old man she had always known her mom loved and favored Bella more than her, but she never knew it would go this far. Tears stung her eyes as she stumbled off the bed. She didn't know what time it was, only that something terrible was about to happen. Then the door opened. She braced herself, terrified, but the person who walked in wasn't an old man. It was a tall, well-dressed, handsome man with a strong build, neatly trimmed hair, and a look of confusion on his face. Alexander Johnson, the billionaire CEO of the Stone Group, one of the biggest companies in the city. They stared at each other for a full 5 seconds before he stepped back and looked at the room number. "This isn't right," he said aloud, more to himself than to her. She stood there, silent and trembling. "Wait." He looked again. "You don't look okay. Are you hurt?" Olivia shook her head, trying to steady her voice. I was brought here. Drugged. I think they sold me." She was prepared for judgment, or coldness, but instead Alex sat down slowly, stunned. He called someone, spoke calmly, then hung up. "I know what this is," he said finally. "My younger brother booked this room, told me to come and arrest. I think he is up to something. I didn't know it would be like this." He stood, reached into his wallet and offered her a card. "Here, there are $2 million on this. Take it. Get out of this situation." Olivia stared at it, then slowly shook her head. "I only need 50,000, she whispered. "That's what they asked for. You don't want the rest? You look like you will need it." She wiped her eyes. "I don't want your pity. I'll take what I need to walk away. That's all." Alex watched her for a moment. This girl, drugged and betrayed, still standing with pride. She wasn't like anyone he knew. "My mother keeps pressuring me to get married," he said slowly. "She thinks I'm wasting time. I've always avoided it. But if I were to marry someone, I'd want it to be someone honest like you." Olivia's eyes widened. He continued, more serious now. "If I offered marriage, just in name, to give you protection. Would you accept?" She stared at him, overwhelmed. "I'll never force you," he added. "No expectations. But you'll never have to worry about being sold again." There was silence between them. Then, Olivia nodded. "But if we do this," she said carefully, "I want it to stay a secret. I want to finish school, intern, work. I don't want people to whisper about me. I want to earn things myself." He nodded. "Then it'll stay a secret. No one will know. Not the media, not the staff, not even my family. Just you and me." Alex gave a small smile. "Deal. What is your name, if I may ask?" "I am Olivia, Sir Alexander," she replied. "I see you already know who I am. You can call me Alex." Who wouldn't know him? The handsome CEO of the company where she's going to work as an intern. And just like that, they registered their marriage. Quietly, legally. No ring, no ceremony. And they both went their separate way, planning to meet again whenever they needed each other for the show. A billionaire CEO and a girl nearly sold like property. Two strangers bound by fate and secrecy. Back in the present, Olivia's heart thudded as she watched Alex walk down the corridor, calm as ever, staff parting for him like water. None of them knew what she knew, and she would do anything to keep it that way. As the last whispers of the morning drama settled, Alexander quietly turned and began walking back toward the executive wing of Stone Enterprises. Without needing to be asked, the old cleaner, Mrs. Grace Johnson, followed behind him, her steps slower but certain. They said nothing until they reached his private office on the top floor. Inside, the large space was quiet and bright, with city views pouring through the tall windows. As the door closed behind them, Grace removed her cleaning gloves and folded them neatly, placing them on the desk. Alexander turned to her, his expression still composed but touched by concern. "You shouldn't have done that, Mum," he said softly. Grace looked up at him, her tone firm but calm. "And you shouldn't have gotten married in secret." He sighed. He knew this conversation had been coming. "You knew?" She gave a slight, knowing smile. "I'm your mother, Alex. Of course I knew." He walked around to the other side of the desk and sat down slowly. "I wasn't hiding it to shame you. She just wanted to finish school without distractions." "I understand," she said, pulling a chair closer and sitting down across from him. "That's exactly why I wanted to see her for myself. I needed to know what kind of woman made you, the man who rejected every girl I introduced, go and marry someone quietly in the shadows." He was quiet. "So I came here," she continued, "as a poor old cleaner. No name, no title, just someone invisible to people like Sandra and the others." She paused, her voice softening. And I watched. Alex leaned forward slightly, his eyes focused. "She didn't know who I was," Grace said. "But she treated me with respect. She spoke kindly. When Sandra poured water on the floor and mocked me, she stood up for me without hesitation. She didn't do it for show. She did it because it was right." There was a silence between them. Then Grace smiled. "You chose well, son." Alex exhaled, relief washing over him. "Thank you, Mum. I think I like her from the moment I set eyes on her. But I don't think she feels the same. Not even my money could move her." "Give her time, son. She's not like the others," Grace added. "She's real. That's rare these days." She stood up, brushing off her skirt as though returning to her role as mother instead of undercover cleaner. "I've made a decision," she said. "At my birthday party next month, I'll introduce her to everyone as my daughter-in-law. I do not like how she is getting bullied here." Alex looked up quickly. "Mum, she's still worried about gossip, about being judged." "I understand," Grace nodded. "I won't push her into the spotlight yet. But she deserves to be honored. You two can still keep it quiet at work if that's what she wants. But this family will know who she is." He smiled, grateful. "One more thing," Grace added gently. "Invite her to move into the mansion. She shouldn't be living out there alone. I'll personally begin preparing her, quietly, no noise, just one-on-one, woman to woman." Alex chuckled softly. "So, you're going to train her?" "She's going to be the wife of a Johnson," Grace said. "She deserves to know what that means." Later that evening, Olivia received call. "Hello?" she answered, unsure of the unknown number. Olivia, Mrs. Grace's warm voice said gently. It's me. There was a short pause. I'd like to invite you to stay at the house. No pressure, but I think it's time we got to know each other better. Olivia's hand tightened on the phone. Yes, Ma, I'd be honored. And just like that, the next chapter of her life began, not in secret, not in shame, but with open arms. Despite now living in a grand mansion with Mrs. Grace Johnson and being secretly married to the most powerful man in the company, Olivia returned to Stone Enterprises each morning the same way she always had, quiet, punctual, and humble. And yet nothing had changed on the 10th floor. Olivia, Sandra's sharp voice echoed across the office. Take these old catalogs to the storage room and don't take all day. Yes, Miss Sandra, Olivia said softly, already reaching for the stack. The design department staff watched her with barely hidden amusement. A few whispered as she passed. She didn't even graduate from a proper university, someone muttered. She's still an intern. What does she think she's doing here? Another voice added with a giggle. Miss Sandra graduated top of her class in London, and she's from a big family. Everyone knows she'll be the CEO's wife soon. Sandra, seated elegantly at her desk, pretended not to hear, but then she turned and gave a graceful smile. Please, she said sweetly. Some positions aren't for everyone. Only someone of my status can marry into a family like the Johnsons. The others nodded eagerly. Being from a prestigious family, with a degree from a prestigious university, only someone like me deserves to stand beside Alexander Johnson, not some cheap, lowly people. The office chuckled lightly. All eyes turned to Olivia. She said nothing. She only bowed her head, holding the folders close to her chest, and walked away. No one knew that the very man Sandra dreamed of was already married to the girl she mocked. That evening, after work, Olivia received a message from Alex. Meet me at the downtown gallery at 6 o'clock. Wear something comfortable. This was the first time Alex had asked her out since their contractual marriage, so she arrived on time, dressed simply in a soft blue blouse and jeans. The gallery was quiet, private, and filled with polished display cases holding ancient jade, ivory, and gold. Alex met her at the entrance and offered a small smile. I want you to meet someone. They walked together into a back room where an elderly man stood examining a pale green bracelet under a bright lamp. His posture was strong, his hands steady, and his eyes sharp behind gold-rimmed glasses. Mr. Francis, Alex said respectfully. This is Olivia. Mr. Francis looked up. He had the presence of a man who had seen a lot and trusted few. But when he looked at Olivia, something in his gaze softened. He said with curiosity. You're the one Alex told me about. Olivia bowed her head politely. Good evening, sir. Mr. Francis gestured toward a tray. Tell me, which one of these is real jade? Olivia blinked, surprised. Sir? Try, he said simply. Nervously, Olivia stepped forward. She studied the stones. Two looked identical, but one had a slightly cloudy core and small natural imperfections. She pointed. This one. Mr. Francis raised an eyebrow. Why? Real jade isn't perfect, she said. It usually has some natural lines. And the weight? I can feel it. He nodded slowly. Correct. Alex smiled. Mr. Francis stepped closer. Do you know anything about antiques? Not really, sir, she admitted. Mr. Francis stared at her a moment longer, then turned to Alex. She has the eye. He looked back at Olivia. You remind me of someone I knew long ago, my late wife. She had your calm spirit and the same sharp instincts. Olivia stood still, unsure of what to say. I don't take students, he added, but I'll make an exception for you. Her eyes widened. Me? Yes. If you're willing, I'll train you. Not just to spot real from fake, but to understand the history behind every piece, the story, the soul. Olivia looked to Alex, who gave her a gentle nod. And just like that, another door quietly opened in her world, not made of gold or fame, but of wisdom, mystery, and unexpected connection. The car ride back from Mr. Francis's gallery was quiet. Olivia sat beside Alex, looking out the window at the moving city lights. Her mind spun with everything that had just happened. The gallery, the antiques, Mr. Francis's strange warmth, and his offer to mentor her. It felt like a dream, one she hadn't asked for. Alex glanced at her once, then turned his eyes back to the road. "You were impressive in there," he said gently. She didn't reply. After a long pause, she finally spoke. "I still don't know why you brought me." "You have a gift," he said simply. Mr. Francis saw it too. Olivia turned to face him, her voice quiet but firm. "Alex, can I ask you something?" He nodded, slowing the car as they neared the mansion gates. "Why are you doing all this? Why are you being so kind?" He parked the car but didn't answer immediately. She looked down at her hands. "I know this marriage was never meant to be real. You married me to save me, not because you loved me. I'm grateful, truly. But I don't want to rely on you." Alex's brows furrowed slightly. She continued, her words trembling. "So if someday you want a divorce, just tell me. I won't argue. I'll sign. I know I'm not the kind of woman your family expects. You don't have to feel responsible for me anymore." Silence settled between them like a heavy fog. Then Alex finally said, "You think I married you out of pity?" She didn't answer. "I married you because you stood in that hotel room, scared and drugged, and still chose dignity. That wasn't pity. That was respect." Her eyes filled with tears, but she quickly looked away. Alex didn't say anything more. He stepped out of the car and walked ahead, leaving her a moment to gather herself before following. Meanwhile, in a cramped flat across town, two women sat on a small couch, both staring at the screen of a cracked phone. Bella, always sharply dressed and full of pride, scrolled through a photo someone had posted from the city's luxury district. "That's her," she said coldly. "Olivia, our little lost rat, living in that mansion." Their mother, Mrs. Benson, leaned forward. "You mean the Johnson mansion?" Bella nodded slowly. "Not just living there. Word is, Madame Grace treats her like royalty." "How? How did that girl, of all people, get into that house?" "I don't know," Bella said bitterly. "But it makes no sense. What does Madame Grace see in a common girl like her? She's nothing special." "I knew we should never have let her go so easily," her mother grumbled. "Look at her now, all quiet and innocent, and somehow she's in the good books of one of the richest families in the country." Bella's face darkened. If she thinks she's going to enjoy that life in peace, she's wrong. They still didn't know the full truth. That Olivia wasn't just favored by Madame Grace. She was married to Alexander Johnson himself. A few days later, the grand ballroom of the Royal Orchid Hotel glittered with gold and light. Elegant guests from across the country mingled beneath chandeliers as violin music floated through the air. Tonight was Madame Grace Johnson's birthday, a celebration filled with class, wealth, and power. Olivia stood quietly near the edge of the room, dressed in a simple but graceful gown Madame Grace had gifted her earlier that week. Her hands trembled slightly as she held the small velvet box in her clutch. Inside, it was the jade belt hook, an antique gift selected carefully under Mr. Francis's guidance. "Are you sure I should give this to her?" she had asked him days earlier. "She'll know it's from the heart," Mr. Francis had said with a smile. Now, watching guests exchange air kisses and expensive laughs, Olivia felt more out of place than ever. Across the room, Sandra arrived in a deep green designer gown, her chin held high. She was surrounded by staff from Stone Enterprises, her posture proud and controlled. She spotted Olivia but said nothing. Instead, she smiled coolly and walked confidently toward the gift table, carrying a large, shiny box. "Even if she is invited to this high-class party because of the old woman," Sandra muttered under her breath, "she'll never be one of us." Moments later, Madame Grace entered, dressed in regal purple silk. The crowd turned to applaud. She smiled graciously and took her seat at the head of the hall, flanked by Alex on one side and several close friends on the other. A butler stepped forward. "It's time for guests to offer their birthday gifts." One by one, people stepped up with their presents: gold, paintings, precious stones. When it was Olivia's turn, she walked slowly, hands clasped tightly around the velvet box. "Happy birthday, Ma," she said, bowing gently as she presented the box. Madame Grace opened it, and a soft gasp escaped her lips. Inside lay the jade belt hook, gentle in color, smooth and unmistakably rare. "This," she whispered, eyes wide, "this is real. From ancient times. A priceless antique." The room fell silent. Sandra's smile stiffened. Madame Grace looked up at Olivia, her voice warm. "Thank you, my dear. This here means more to me than words can say." Olivia bowed her head, blushing. Sandra suddenly stepped forward, clearing her throat. "Madame Grace, I also prepared a special gift." She opened her shining box with flair, revealing another jade belt hook, brighter in color and polished to shine. "This one," Sandra announced proudly, "was hand-picked by one of the finest experts in the city." The crowd murmured, comparing both pieces. Madame Grace studied it quietly. "It's lovely." Then a man in a sleek gray suit stepped forward. "I can confirm that," he said with confidence. "This piece is 100% genuine. My name is Mr. Andrew, a jade specialist." Olivia looked at him carefully. Something felt off. Sandra smirked slightly. But before anyone could speak again, a voice called from the back of the room. "Then let a real expert speak." Heads turned. Mr. Francis walked in, dressed in a classic black suit, eyes sharp. He walked straight to Madame Grace's table and examined both jade belt hooks. "This one," he said, pointing at Olivia's, "was from my personal collection, a rare treasure, genuine, preserved, and well chosen. And this one," he turned to Sandra's gift, "is fake." Gasps rippled through the room. Mr. Andrew's face paled. Sandra looked stunned. "That's impossible." Mr. Francis raised an eyebrow. "Is it? Then show me your certification. Show me any test to prove its origin." Mr. Andrew stammered. I wasn't told it would be tested." "Exactly," Mr. Francis cut in. "You were counting on charm, not truth." He turned back to Madame Grace. "This young woman, Olivia, has more honesty in her than most dealers I've met. You are lucky to have her." Madame Grace smiled proudly. Sandra stepped back, humiliated, her mouth tight. The guests around her turned and whispered. And Olivia quietly stepped back into the crowd, saying nothing, her head held high. Alex watched her from across the room, a quiet pride in his eyes. The ballroom was still buzzing long after Mr. Francis made his declaration. Guests who had come simply to honor Madame Grace's birthday were now murmuring among themselves, whispering about Olivia and the powerful man who had just backed her. "Is that really the Mr. Francis?" one guest whispered. "The international antique expert?" another asked, wide-eyed. "I saw him on a European documentary once," someone said. "He helped restore the royal crown of Vinstro. What's his connection to that girl?" All eyes lingered on Olivia as she quietly returned to her place among the crowd. Sandra stood rigid beside the gift table, her smile forced and her jaw tight. Her fake jade belt hook still sat untouched, a silent symbol of her disgrace. Still, she laughed lightly, brushing her hair behind her ear as a co-worker tried to comfort her. "Don't worry about that," the woman whispered. "She just got lucky." Sandra smiled sweetly. "The annoying old woman may favor her now, but Madame Grace isn't the one Olivia has to win." She glanced toward Alexander from across the room, her smile growing colder. "I will win his heart," she whispered to herself. "And when I do, everything she has will be mine." Days later, since the party, Olivia had continued her mentorship with Mr. Francis. Twice a week she visited his private antique gallery, learning the names, textures, and hidden truths behind items others barely noticed. And once a week, he began visiting the Johnson mansion, officially to speak with Madame Grace, but always asking after Olivia with a quiet fondness. That morning, he sat with Madame Grace in the sunroom, sipping tea. "She's special," he said gently. "That girl, Olivia, there's something about her." Madame Grace smiled. "I thought the same the first time I met her." Mr. Francis looked out the window, his voice low. "She reminds me of someone I lost a long time ago." Madame Grace turned to him gently. "Your daughter?" He nodded slowly. "It's been 20 years already. She was just a baby. We were at a busy festival, and in a moment, she vanished. I'm so sorry, I cannot even begin to imagine your pain." "I remember your wife died a few years after that unfortunate incident," Madame Grace said sincerely. "I've searched everywhere," he added, Some nights I still wonder if she's out there. Have there been any leads? She asked. Mr. Francis shook his head. Nothing yet. Just then a knock came at the door. The maid stepped in. Ma, there's a young lady here asking for Olivia. She says her name is Bella. Olivia, who had been walking past the corridor, paused as soon as she heard the name. Moments later, Bella swept into the room like a storm. Her dress was fashionable, her makeup sharp. Her eyes landed on Mr. Francis with deliberate focus. There you are, she said loudly, her voice shaking. Everyone turned. Mr. Francis, she said, walking straight to him. I think you're my real father. The room fell silent. What? Olivia, who just stepped into the room, breathed, frozen. Bella pulled out a small, worn photograph. This is me as a child. I've only just discovered the truth. The people who raised me weren't my biological parents. I was adopted. And recently I found this photo in my mother's box. With your name written on the back, I went to your studio to find you. You weren't there, so I decided to come here. Mr. Francis took the photo slowly, his hands suddenly trembling. I've been searching for my family, Bella continued, her voice softer now. And now I've found you. Olivia stepped forward, shocked. Bella, what are you saying? We grew up together. We were raised by the same parents. You're my sister. Bella turned, her eyes filled with bitterness. That's what I thought too, but I'm not. They only adopted me. I was never really one of you. But why now? Olivia asked, confused and hurt. Why tell all this now? Because I see you cozying up to my real father, Bella snapped, and I'm not going to let you steal my life. Tears burned in Olivia's eyes. I never even knew. Mr. Francis sat silently, looking at the photo, then up at Bella, then at Olivia, his face unreadable. Madame Grace stood slowly. We'll get to the truth, she said gently. We'll take things step by step. But in Olivia's heart, something had broken. Mr. Francis stared at the faded photo in his hand, the edges worn with time. His eyes trembled as he traced the tiny smile on the little girl's face, the same dimple, the same curve of the cheek. A name came quietly to his lips. Tracy. He turned slowly to Bella, who now stood with her hands clasped tightly in front of her. This was taken just weeks before she disappeared, he whispered. Where did you find it? In a locked drawer, Bella replied, her voice breaking. They must have kept it from me. I only found out recently that I was adopted. I started asking questions and then I found that picture. Mr. Francis's eyes filled with tears. My daughter. My baby girl. You're alive. He pulled Bella into his arms and embraced her tightly. For a moment the room was still. Olivia stood frozen, watching a man she had grown to admire shed tears for the sister she once thought she had. Madame Grace looked on, her expression unreadable. Later that evening, Bella moved into Mr. Francis's estate. The staff were instructed to treat her with the highest respect. She was referred to as Miss Tracy from that moment forward. Plans began for her to inherit his legacy. Jewels, documents, assets, everything. But something didn't sit right with Madame Grace. She watched Bella from a distance. How quickly she adapted, how confidently she carried herself. Something felt off. One morning over tea with Mr. Francis, she spoke carefully. My friend, she said, placing her cup down. Please don't take this the wrong way, but for peace of mind, perhaps you should run a DNA test, just to be sure. Mr. Francis frowned, clearly uncomfortable. She has the photo. The story matches. I know, Grace nodded gently. But this isn't about doubting her. It's about certainty. If she's your daughter, nothing can change that. But if she isn't, you'll want to know. After a long pause, Mr. Francis agreed. Yes, you're right. But Bella wasn't about to take chances. Unknown to him, Victor, Alexander's younger brother and longtime rival, had already approached her. I know you're not his daughter, he had told her coldly, but I also know you're clever, and I know how to change DNA results. I know he will do that for confirmation, so you should be prepared. Bella had raised an eyebrow. And what do you want in return? Victor smiled darkly. Well, let's just say I have my If we work together, we both win. And so they did. By the time the results came back, the documents had already been altered. Mr. Francis read them with trembling hands. 99.9% match. He smiled through tears. It's true. Meanwhile, at Stone Enterprises, Sandra hadn't stopped her silent war with Olivia. With Bella's rise, she'd grown more desperate. In a meeting room crowded with staff, she cleared her throat loudly. "Olivia," she said with exaggerated sweetness, "can you fetch me coffee from that cafe across the street? Not here, the special one, the one with imported beans. Oh, and you might want to hurry. We wouldn't want you to be late again." The staff laughed softly. But before Olivia could stand, a voice cut through the room like a knife. "That won't be necessary." Everyone turned. Alexander Johnson had stepped into the room, sharp in a charcoal suit, his expression hard. The laughter died instantly. "Olivia is here as an intern in design," he said, eyes locked on Sandra. "Not as your errand girl. If you want coffee, get it yourself." Sandra opened her mouth, stunned. "Sir, I was just joking. I don't find it funny," he said. "This behavior is unprofessional and won't be tolerated again." The room went dead silent. Alexander gave one last look around the table before turning and leaving. Olivia sat frozen in her chair, her heart pounding. After the meeting, her co-workers avoided her gaze. Their earlier mockery turned into awkward silence. No one dared say a word. As she returned to her desk, her thoughts swirled. He defended me, in front of everyone. She hadn't expected it. She hadn't asked for it. And yet, something inside her warmed. Maybe, just maybe, this marriage could become something real. But almost instantly she pushed the thought away. No, she couldn't afford to dream. Because dreams like that didn't come true for girls like her. Bella, meanwhile, wasted no time settling into her new life as the long-lost daughter of Mr. Francis. Draped in luxury and glowing with attention, she walked through the halls of his mansion like a queen returning to her throne. But her eyes were always on Alexander. She began showing up more often at the Johnson mansion under the excuse of bonding with family friends. She brought handmade gifts for Madame Grace, asked endless questions about the Johnsons, and smiled a little too brightly whenever Alex entered the room. He remained polite, respectful, but distant. He greeted her with a nod, listened with patience, but his gaze always drifted elsewhere, often unknowingly toward Olivia. Still, Bella kept trying. She laughed at all his jokes, lingered near him in the garden, and made sure to mention how happy she was to have finally found her real family, while glancing at Alex as if he were her true prize. One afternoon, Olivia returned early from antique studies with Mr. Francis and walked into the main sitting room of the mansion. There she saw Bella and Alex, seated on the same couch. Bella was smiling too warmly, her hand lightly touching Alex's arm as she shared a story. He didn't pull away, but he didn't smile back either. Olivia stood frozen in the doorway. She hadn't meant to walk in on anything, but her chest suddenly felt tight. She turned quietly and walked out without saying a word. Upstairs, in the privacy of her room, Olivia sat on the edge of her bed, holding back the tears pressing behind her eyes. Why do I feel like this? She didn't need to ask. She already knew. She had fallen in love with him. The man who once saved her, the man who defended her when no one else did, the man who quietly watched over her without asking for anything. And yet, she reminded herself bitterly, he was never mine. Our marriage isn't even real. She buried her face in her pillow and cried in silence, her heart aching in a way she couldn't explain. But while Olivia wept alone, Alex was deep in thought. He didn't trust Bella. Her sudden arrival, her eagerness to claim the title of heir, something about her felt staged. So quietly, without a word to anyone, he instructed his assistant to run a private DNA test between Bella and Mr. Francis. When the results came back, his suspicions were confirmed. They weren't related. Alex closed the file and locked it in his drawer. That meant the real Tracy was still out there, and he intended to find her. Meanwhile, Olivia continued her training with Mr. Francis. She helped him restore a valuable dynasty painting, carefully mixing pigments and reapplying ancient colors with a precision that impressed even the experts. One day, as she leaned over the table, carefully adjusting the brushstrokes, Mr. Francis watched her quietly, the way she held her tools, her calm energy, the gentle tilt of her head. Something stirred inside him. Later that evening, he pulled Alex aside. "Alexander, I've had so much on my mind recently and I just want to share it with someone. I know I've found my daughter and I should be happy and content. But Olivia reminds me so much of my wife," he said quietly. "And of Tracy. Her spirit, her patience, her hands, even her laugh." Alex paused. "I know," he replied carefully. Mr. Francis blinked. "You noticed it too?" Alex gave a small nod. Then after a beat he added, "I already ran the test." Mr. Francis's breath caught. "You..." "What?" "She's your daughter," Alex said gently. "The DNA confirmed it. But I also ran a test with Bella, and it confirms she is my daughter," Mr. Francis said with a shocked expression. "I know, but I think you were tricked. If you have doubts, you can have the DNA done again." For a long moment, Mr. Francis said nothing. Then he whispered, "It's her. All this time." "Yes," Alex nodded. "But don't say anything yet. I think something deeper is at play. Bella's appearance, the forged results. Someone is using you, and if we move too fast, they'll cover their tracks." Mr. Francis nodded slowly, emotion clouding his eyes. "She's been right in front of me this whole time. And she doesn't know yet," Alex added. "Let's keep it that way. For now." Downstairs, Olivia laughed softly as she organized brushes and paper. Bella stood in the doorway, watching, her smile quickly fading. The more Mr. Francis praised Olivia, the more time they spent together, the more Bella's jealousy festered. And soon, she would do anything to make Olivia disappear. Bella pushed open the old apartment door and stepped in with a sharp scowl on her face. The air smelled of dust and old memories. Her heels clicked against the tiled floor as she walked past the tiny kitchen and into the living room. Mrs. Benson, her mother, sat comfortably in a faded armchair, peeling oranges with slow precision. "She's getting too close," Bella hissed as she dropped her bag on the table. Mrs. Benson looked up calmly. "Who?" "Olivia," Bella spat. "She's always with Mr. Francis now. He's starting to... Look at her. Talk to her. I think he's getting suspicious." Mrs. Benson raised an eyebrow, then leaned forward with interest. "And Alexander?" Bella threw her hands in the air. "He's no better. He never gives me more than polite smiles, but I've seen the way he watches her. Quiet, protective." Mrs. Benson sat back, chuckling darkly. "Of course he does. She has his blood. Your blood's from me and your useless father." Bella's eyes flicked toward her mother. Mrs. Benson's smile faded slightly. "We did the right thing, Bella. You were never meant for this life, the poverty, the scraping by. That girl," she sneered. "She never belonged here," Bella muttered. Mrs. Benson nodded. "Exactly. And when I saw that missing child poster, I knew it was her face. That rich man, Mr. Francis, was looking for her." She stood and walked toward the cupboard, pulling out a faded folder. "You know how long I kept this? That poster. That photo. All of it. I waited for the day we'd finally use it." Bella folded her arms tightly across her chest. "But what if it all falls apart?" "It won't," her mother said confidently. "Victor Johnson backed us. The DNA result is clean. You played the part perfectly. You're already in his house. You're already living the life that should have been yours." Bella looked away. "Olivia is getting closer to him, and she doesn't even know the truth." Mrs. Benson's eyes narrowed. "That's why you need to act fast." Bella gasped. "All this wouldn't have happened if I did not make that mistake. I accidentally gave the wrong room number." Mrs. Benson nodded again. "You took her to the luxury floor. That's why she ended up in Alexander Johnson's suite. That's when everything went sideways. We got a call from the old man, furious that the girl never arrived. By then it was too late. The damage was done." Bella sat down slowly, as though her legs no longer had the strength to carry her. "She's not even trying," Bella said bitterly. And yet Mr. Francis is drawn to her, and Alex, he never looked at me like that. Mrs. Benson walked over and placed her hands firmly on her daughter's shoulders. Listen to me, Bella. You're the one I raised. You're the one I protected. Olivia? She was just a mistake we fed and clothed until we didn't need her anymore. But now she's a threat, and I won't let her take what I gave to you. Bella swallowed hard, a mix of nerves and fire building in her chest. You were born for more, Bella, her mother whispered. So take it, whatever it costs. Bella stood up slowly, her jaw tightening. I won't let her take this life from me, she said, her voice cold, even if I have to make her disappear for good. She picked up her bag, her voice cold and steady. Alex and Mr. Francis are mine. I deserve the life of luxury, not that low-class Olivia. And as she walked out of the apartment, the lies behind her grew heavier, but so did her determination to win. 3 days later, it was time for the charity auction. The Stone Enterprises annual charity auction was one of the company's biggest events of the year. Held in a grand hall glowing with gold accents and soft lights, it was a gathering of power, status, and high society. All eyes were on the priceless antiques, the designer gowns, and of course, the people. Bella arrived in a sparkling silver dress, her chin held high and her steps confident. Since claiming to be Mr. Francis's daughter, she had been glowing under the spotlight, praised, envied, and respected. But tonight, she had one more goal. Humiliate Olivia. She spotted her across the room, quiet as always, dressed in an elegant but modest gown, standing near the display table beside Mr. Francis. He was showing her something, a jade necklace perhaps, but the way he looked at her made Bella's stomach twist. She made her move. Ladies and gentlemen, Bella's voice echoed over the microphone as she stepped onto the small stage, cutting off the auctioneer for a moment. Before we continue tonight's wonderful event, I want to take a moment to recognize someone very special. All eyes turned. Olivia. Bella smiled sweetly. Please come up. Olivia hesitated, confused. Mr. Francis looked puzzled too. Bella continued. Most of you know that I was reunited with my father recently, Mr. Francis Coleman, after years apart. And tonight I want to celebrate the journey of finding one's true family. The room applauded politely. Olivia stepped up slowly, unsure of what Bella was planning. Bella turned to her, voice slightly louder. You've been spending so much time with my father lately, even copying my interests, following me into the antique world. It's flatterily. Whispers rippled through the crowd. Olivia's heart started to race. She looked at Bella, stunned. I just think, Bella added with a smile that didn't reach her eyes, it's important that we all know our place. Pretending to be someone you're not, it can only last for so long. Enough, came a calm, commanding voice from the back. All heads turned. Alexander Johnson stepped forward from the crowd, dressed in a sharp black suit, holding a sealed envelope in his hand. His face was unreadable, but his eyes were cold. He stepped onto the stage, standing between the two women. He looked at Bella. Since you're so eager to talk about truth, let's share it. He held up the envelope. This is a certified DNA test. It compares Mr. Francis Coleman's genetic material to both yours and Olivia's. A gasp echoed. Bella's face drained of color. Daniel opened the envelope slowly. He read the results aloud, clearly and without emotion. Olivia Johnson is a 99.9% genetic match to Mr. Francis Coleman. A pause. Bella Benson is not related. The room went dead silent. Mr. Francis rose slowly from his seat. His hand trembled as he looked at Olivia, no longer as a student, but as his daughter. He stepped onto the stage, eyes misted with emotion. Then, without hesitation, he pulled Olivia into a gentle, trembling embrace. My daughter, he whispered. Olivia froze, tears instantly filling her eyes. I don't understand. Alex stepped closer. You're the child in that photo, Olivia, the one who went missing 20 years ago. Bella used your photo, your face. Mr. Francis added softly. I always wondered why I felt so close to you. Bella took one step back, shaking her head. No, this isn't fair. The audience stared at her. She looked around wildly, once admired, now exposed. "This was supposed to be mine," she snapped, her voice breaking. "I did everything right." No one spoke. No one came to her defense. The silence cut deeper than any insult. With tears of rage and humiliation streaming down her cheeks, Bella turned and fled from the stage, heels echoing against the polished marble as she disappeared through the grand doors. Back on stage, Mr. Francis held Olivia's hand tightly, gently wiping the tears from her cheek. "You were never meant to be hidden," he whispered. "You were born to shine." The crowd inside the auction hall was still stunned. Mr. Francis, a man known across nations for his brilliance and composure, stood proudly with his arm around Olivia. "My daughter," he repeated, his voice filled with emotion, "has finally come home." The guests erupted into murmurs. Some clapped politely. Others looked on in disbelief. Olivia, quiet, humble Olivia, was the long-lost daughter of Mr. Francis Coleman. Sandra stood frozen near the back, her glass of wine trembling slightly, her jaw clenched. First, she lost the chance to shine at Madame Grace's birthday. Now this? Again, Olivia had managed to outshine her. "She's just lucky," Sandra hissed under her breath. "Lucky and manipulative." But her forced smile returned as Mr. Francis continued speaking. "I want everyone to know," he said firmly, "that I've found my blood. Olivia is no longer just my student. She is my daughter, and I intend to make up for every year we lost." The crowd cheered, and activities resumed across the room with people going about their businesses. But Mr. Francis's eyes were still fixed on his precious daughter. He turned to her gently. "Come stay at my home with me, Olivia. I'll have your room prepared tonight." Olivia looked at him, eyes full of warmth, love, and gentleness. She opened her mouth, then hesitated. She thought of Alex, of Madame Grace, of the quiet nights in the Johnson mansion that now felt like home. "Thank you, sir," she said softly. "But I already have a home." Mr. Francis blinked, surprised. She continued, "I want to stay with my husband, and with Madame Grace. She's treated me like a daughter even when she didn't know who I really was." Mr. Francis's lips trembled. Then he smiled, even prouder than before. "That only proves you are my child. And please no more, sir. Call me father." They hugged again, longer this time. They were both truly very happy. But in the shadows, someone else was quietly seething. A few days later, the Johnson mansion was unusually quiet that evening. Olivia helped the housekeeper serve dinner, chatting lightly with Madame Grace while Alex sat nearby, watching them both with quiet affection. But later that night, everything changed. Madame Grace suddenly collapsed after dinner, her body limp, her breathing shallow. Panic swept through the mansion. The doctor arrived in minutes and confirmed it was poison. All eyes turned toward Olivia. "She was the last person near her food," the housekeeper whispered. "She served the soup." Olivia stood frozen, shaking her head. No, I would never." But the staff had already begun whispering. Madame Grace was unconscious and couldn't speak for herself. Though no one said it aloud, the tension in the air made it clear. She was being blamed. Alex stood beside her, his expression unreadable. "I didn't do it," Olivia whispered to him. "I swear I didn't." He looked at her, his heart torn in two. "I know," he said softly, but still, he didn't speak up. Later that night, Madame Grace's personal aide came to Olivia's room with bags. "Ma'am," she said gently, "it may be best if you leave for now, just until this is cleared." Olivia stared at her in disbelief. "Leave? But It's for your safety," the aide added quickly. And just like that, Olivia was escorted out of the mansion. She returned to her father's mansion. He welcomed her with open arms. Tears burned behind her eyes as she sat on the luxurious bed alone, wondering how quickly everything had turned. Back at the mansion, Alex sat alone in his home office, replaying the evening in his head, his fists clenched, his heart pounded. She didn't do it. He knew it. He called his assistant. "Begin a full investigation, quietly. Start with the kitchen. I want every staff member checked, especially the housekeeper." Elsewhere, Victor stood in a dark alley, speaking to a woman in a maid's uniform. the same housekeeper who had served the food that night. "You did well," he said, handing her an envelope filled with cash. "Now disappear, go back to the village, lay low." The woman took the money, nodding nervously. What Victor didn't know was that someone else had followed him. Alex's assistant had been recording from a distance, every word clear, every movement captured. The truth was coming. And soon, it would explode. Alexander sat silently in his study, the morning light streaming through the large window as his assistant placed a small USB drive on his desk. "This is it," the assistant said. "Recorded last night. Clean audio, full footage. Victor paid the housekeeper and told her to vanish." Alex's heart tightened. He clenched his jaw and picked up the drive slowly. "He tried to poison Mother," Alex said through gritted teeth, "and framed my wife." His voice dropped. "I wonder why he never learns." Without wasting a second, Alex forwarded the recording to the family lawyer and summoned Madame Grace's personal doctor to share the findings. Then he made one final call. "Prepare the main hall. I want everyone present, especially Victor." That afternoon, the grand hall of the Johnson mansion was filled with quiet tension. Staff members stood along the walls, whispering. Family lawyers sat beside Madame Grace's chair as she rested upright, weak but recovering. Victor strolled in late, wearing a smug look. "You called a family meeting over that girl again?" Alex stepped forward, holding the remote. He pressed play on the screen behind him. The footage played. Victor's voice filled the room. "You did well. Now disappear. Go back to the village, lay low." The sound of cash rustling, the trembling voice of the maid accepting the bribe, every word undeniable. The room went dead silent. Victor's smirk slowly faded. Mrs. Grace's eyes burned with fury as she stood up, trembling but firm. "You poisoned my food," she said, her voice hoarse, and blamed Olivia. Victor's face twisted. "That girl, she's always in the way. Everything is always about Alex, the company, the respect, even you. You never looked at me like you look at him. And you think this was the way to change that?" she thundered, her voice stronger now. "You nearly killed me. Framed your own sister-in-law." "She's not my sister-in-law," Victor shouted. "Why does Alex get everything and I get nothing? He gets to be happy with Mr. Coleman's daughter." Madame Grace turned away from him, chest heaving with anger. "You don't even see your mistake, not a drop of remorse." She looked to the lawyer. "Prepare the papers. From this day forward, Victor is no longer a part of the Johnson inheritance." Victor's eyes widened. "What? You can't do that." "I just did," she snapped. Turning to the stunned staff and family present, Madame Grace lifted her chin proudly. "Half of my shares in the company will go to Olivia. The other half remains with Alex." The room gasped. Victor's face turned red with fury. "You'll regret this." "I already regret raising a son like you," she whispered. Security stepped forward. "Escort him out. He no longer lives here." Victor tried to resist, but the guards were firm. He looked around for help. None came. He was dragged out of the mansion, his screams echoing off the marble floors. Later that night, Alex sat beside Madame Grace's bed. "She didn't want to leave," he said softly. "But I had to let her go. I needed to clear her name first." Madame Grace reached for his hand. "Bring her home." While the storm raged inside the Johnson mansion, Olivia sat quietly by the window of her father's mansion, staring out at the pale afternoon sky. The world outside moved on, but inside her, everything felt like it had stopped. Her fingers held a pen loosely over her journal, but she hadn't written a word in hours. Thoughts of Alex circled endlessly in her mind. He didn't come for me. He didn't fight for me. Maybe. Why am I even surprised? I know he never loved me. She swallowed hard as tears quietly slid down her cheek. I should let him go, she whispered. She pulled out the small drawer by her bedside, took out the marriage certificate she had kept hidden all this while, and looked at it with trembling fingers. It was never real to him. I was just a responsibility. Though every part of her heart longed to return, to hear him say she was wrong, Olivia knew better. Love couldn't be begged for. If he had loved her, he would have said something. She folded the certificate, tucked it into an envelope, and wrote just one word on the front: divorce. The next day, she returned to Mr. Francis's private study, her heart heavy but her mind focused. As she sat surrounded by aged paintings and artifacts, she immersed herself in the world of antiques, her only escape. Her knowledge had grown rapidly. One glance at a carving or scroll and she could name the era, the material, and the signature marks of authenticity. Word was spreading. Scholars and collectors from all over had begun taking interest in her talent. "She sees what others miss," one antique dealer murmured after a visit. "Like she was born for it," another whispered. And though she smiled politely through every compliment, Olivia still returned to her empty room each night and cried silently into her pillow. Meanwhile, at the Johnson mansion, with Victor gone and Madame Grace recovering steadily, Alex finally found the clarity his heart had been searching for. He stood outside on the balcony, staring up at the stars. "She waited for me, and I let her go." He had thought he was protecting her by staying silent, by investigating Victor, by letting the storm pass first. But now, he realized, he should have run to her first. "She deserves to know the truth," he whispered. He pulled out his phone. "Alex, can we meet? I want to talk." A few minutes later, Olivia responded. "Olivia. All right." He closed his eyes and took a deep breath. He would tell her everything. How he'd loved her since the night they met. How she changed everything. How he never stopped thinking about her. He would take her hand and ask her to come home. He didn't know that as he prepared to finally speak, his heart trouble was already watching from the shadows. Someone wasn't done yet, and this time, they were coming for Olivia directly. Victor sat in a dim hotel room, bitterness rolling off him like a storm. The luxury and power he once basked in had been stripped away by the people he once called family, by Olivia. His fists clenched as he replayed the moment Madame Grace cast him out, the way Alex stood silently beside her, proud and favored, as always. His phone rang. It was Bella. "What do you want?" he said coldly. "You," she said through gritted teeth, "owe me a life, and I want it back." Victor leaned back, interested. "Go on." "She ruined everything," Bella hissed. "Mr. Francis, Alex, the inheritance, even the pity of strangers. They all fell at her feet." Victor's eyes narrowed. "She destroyed everything for me too." "Then let's hit her where it hurts," Bella said darkly. "I want to teach her a lesson, a painful one." Victor's lips curled. "Let's kidnap her." "Exactly," Bella said without hesitation. "She's too protected at home. But if we lure her somewhere public, we need someone to help us so no one suspects us," Victor said thoughtfully. Bella's tone turned sharp. "Sandra, I've seen the way she looks at Olivia, like she'd slap her if she could." Victor laughed. "An enemy of an enemy is a friend," Bella finished. That evening, Sandra was alone in her office at Stone Enterprises when she received an unexpected call. "Bella Benson?" she asked, surprised. "I need a favor," Bella said smoothly. "The kind that benefits us both." "I don't do favors for disgraced imposters," Sandra snapped. "Oh, but what if I told you it's about Olivia?" Bella purred. "You hate her, don't you?" Silence. "I know you've always envied her," Bella continued. "Alex favors her. She is Mr. Francis's daughter, so she is now richer than you. You've always been second place to her." "What do you want me to do?" Sandra asked at last. "Call her," Bella instructed. "Tell her there's an emergency meeting at the company. Urgent. Something only she can handle." Sandra smirked. "Consider it done." Meanwhile, Olivia sat near the front gates of the Johnson mansion. Dressed simply, she waited patiently, her heart nervous but hopeful. Tonight, Alex said he wanted to talk. Her chest fluttered. Could it be? Could he really care? Just then, her phone buzzed. "Sandra. Urgent. There's a major client crisis at Stone Enterprises. The team needs you right away." Her brows furrowed. Then came another message. "Sandra. Mr. Francis already approved the file. I just need your antique evaluation notes to be sure. Please come quickly." Olivia stood up instantly. She typed out a quick message to Alex. "Olivia, something urgent came up at the company. Please wait for me. I'll be right back." She hurried into a cab. unaware of the black SUV that slowly began following her. Minutes later, as she entered the near-empty company building, her phone buzzed again. No signal. Before she could turn around, a cloth was pressed over her mouth. Her vision blurred. The world spun. Everything went black. Back at the Johnson mansion, Alex stood in the garden, his hands in his pockets, glancing at the main gate again and again. She had messaged nearly an hour ago. Where was she? He paced, his chest tight. Something didn't feel right. Olivia, he whispered, looking toward the dark horizon. But she was already gone, and the people who took her had no intention of letting her go without a price. Hours passed. Alex sat alone in the grand lounge of the Johnson mansion, staring blankly at the message Olivia had sent hours earlier. Please, wait for me, I'll be right back. But she hadn't come back. The clock ticked louder with each passing minute. Something wasn't right. His chest grew tight with dread. At that moment, Mr. Francis, she's not back yet. Alex shook his head. I've called her phone a dozen times, no response. It's off. Mr. Francis's face darkened. Don't worry, he said calmly, placing a hand on Alex's shoulder. I will make sure we find her, no matter what it takes. He took out his phone, dialed a private number, and gave a series of quiet instructions. Then, without another word, he picked up his coat and left the mansion in a hurry. Meanwhile, in an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of the city, Olivia slowly opened her eyes. The room was dim, lit by a single flickering bulb overhead. Her arms were tied tightly behind her, her ankles bound to the legs of a rusted metal chair. At first her vision blurred, but as it cleared she saw them. Bella, Sandra, and Victor, standing side by side. She gasped, eyes wide with terror. Why? Why are you doing this? Bella stepped forward, smiling wickedly. Because you ruined everything. You stole the life that should have been mine, she spat. The father, the mansion, Alex's attention, it should have been me. You're nothing but a charity case, Sandra added, her voice laced with venom. Let's see if your innocence saves you now. Victor laughed coldly from the shadows. Alex always got everything. The name, the love, the company, but not this time. He'll feel what it's like to lose something he loves. Tears rolled down Olivia's cheeks as she shook her head. Please, don't do this. I didn't steal anything. I didn't ask for any of it. Oh, we know, Bella whispered, kneeling beside her. But now we're going to take everything from you. Behind them, the sound of heavy footsteps approached. 2 masked men entered the room, men hired for something unspeakable. No, Olivia sobbed. Please, please don't. Sandra grinned. No one's coming to rescue you now. Just as one of the men reached forward, bang! The warehouse door burst open. Armed men stormed in. Drop your weapons! Victor, Bella, and Sandra froze. Alex stepped in last, face hard as stone, eyes wild with fury. Touch her again, he growled, and I'll end you myself. The armed guards surrounded them, pulling the masked men away and forcing Bella, Sandra, and Victor to their knees. Alex rushed to Olivia, pulling the ropes from her wrists and gathering her into his arms. She was trembling, broken, tears soaking his shirt. I'm here, he whispered, holding her tightly. I've got you. You're safe now. Olivia clung to him, her sobs muffled in his chest. Bella, Sandra, and Victor were dragged away by the authorities, charged with fraud, conspiracy, and attempted assault. Their screams and excuses faded as the police vans pulled out of the warehouse. Back at the Johnson mansion, the front doors flew open. Madame Grace and Mr. Francis rushed out as soon as they saw Alex carrying Olivia in his arms. Olivia! Madame Grace gasped, hurrying forward. She's okay, Alex said gently, helping her down onto the couch. She's safe now. Mr. Francis placed a hand over his heart, overcome with relief. Madame Grace hugged Olivia tightly, tears falling down her cheeks. My child. My sweet child. You don't have to say anything. Just rest now. Mr. Francis added, You're home, Olivia. You're safe. Go and sleep off this terrible night. We're here for you now. Olivia nodded weakly, her body still trembling. But in that moment, surrounded by the people who truly cared, she knew she was finally loved. Truly, deeply, and unconditionally loved. It was late evening the following day. The moon hung high over the Johnson mansion, giving the garden a natural silver glow. Tiny lanterns lined the walkway, flickering like stars brought down to earth. In the center of the garden, a small round table sat under a tree wrapped in fairy lights. Candlelight danced over fine china, and soft music played from hidden speakers. Everything was perfect. Upstairs, Olivia's phone buzzed. "Alex, come to the garden, just you." Her heart skipped. Still in a soft cream gown Madame Grace had laid out for her, she slipped on her flats and followed the path lit with lanterns. And there he was, waiting. Alex stood near the table in a black suit, no tie, his sleeves rolled neatly. His eyes lit up when he saw her. "You're glowing," he said softly as she approached. She smiled gently. "You did all this?" He pulled out her chair. "Sit with me." They ate quietly, stealing glances between bites, the tension slowly melting into something warm and safe. After dessert, Alex stood, walked around to her, and knelt gently on one knee, not with a ring, but with honesty. "Olivia," he said, voice steady, "I've loved you since the moment I set eyes on you." Her breath caught. "I didn't tell you earlier, because I thought maybe you didn't feel the same," he continued. "So I gave you space, but every day I hoped, and after everything we've been through, I can't hide it anymore." Tears brimmed in her eyes. She stood slowly and wrapped her arms around him. "I love you too, Alex. I always have. I just thought someone like you could never love someone like me." He pulled her closer. "I don't want anyone else but you." And under the soft garden lights, he kissed her, slow and sure, full of promises and peace. The next morning, Alex walked into the main hall of Stone Enterprises, Olivia by his side. The staff turned in surprise. There was a quiet, lingering buzz. Everyone had heard of what happened, of Sandra's involvement in Olivia's kidnapping. Alex's voice rang out clearly. "I want it to be known," he said firmly, "that Miss Sandra is permanently dismissed from this company. She has been arrested and will face the full weight of the law." Gasps echoed across the office. No one asked questions. Then, Alex turned to the staff once more. He looked at Olivia, who held his hand gently. "I'd also like to formally introduce someone to all of you," he announced. "This is Mrs. Olivia Johnson," he said with pride, "my wife and daughter of Mr. Francis Coleman." The room fell into stunned silence. A moment later, applause broke out. Though shocked, the staff couldn't deny it. Olivia was kind, brilliant, and humble. Now they knew why she was always different. She smiled, cheeks flushed, but eyes shining. Later that week, Madame Grace stood at the mansion's gates as Alex and Olivia loaded their bags into the car. "You finally get your honeymoon," she said with a warm smile. Olivia hugged her tightly. "Thank you, Mama Grace, for believing in me." Madame Grace nodded. "I knew from the first day you offered to help me without knowing who I was." She turned to Alex, her eyes soft. "Take care of her." "I will," he promised. As the car pulled away, Madame Grace waved slowly, a satisfied smile on her face. Her son had found a good woman, and her family was finally whole.